Welcome to the Steroids Podcast with your host, Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Boom! Boom! Let's get started here. The Steroids Podcast is brought to you by Ultimate Guide to Roids, 109-page ebook by Dan the Bodybuilder from Thailand. Now, for the first time in bodybuilding history, you have someone with no corporate interests and no obligation to please anyone, not walking on eggshells to not offend. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the information, the whole truth, not a full truth and a half truth, full truth. Ultimate Guide to Roids gives you the keys to the Lamborghini, gives you the information, and lets you decide what to do with it. It's a crime this information has been suppressed this long. Now let's get on with the podcast.
Hey, welcome back to a new episode of the Steroids Podcast. Let's get right into it. The first question for today is from Boo Boo Lapua. He says, "Hey Dan, love the podcast and always appreciate the advice. I know that sex drive, ferocious libido while on a blast of low test high tren for 16 to 20 weeks is way different than sex drive on a cruise of 185 milligrams testosterone per week. My question is, what can I add to my cruise to keep my libido and sex drive as close to the same as being on high tren? Just for reference, here's my cycle while on a blast. Test Enanthate, 250 milligrams per week. Trenbolone and Enanthate, 600 milligrams per week. HCG, 500 IUs 2 times per week. Cabergoline, 0.5 milligrams 2 times per week. Superdrol, 60 milligrams per day, 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off. Aromacin, 12.5 milligrams 2 to 3 times per week. That's a very powerful cycle. A lot of firepower there with the high tren and high Superdrol. My cycle while on a cruise follows below. Test E, 180 milligrams per week. HCG, 500 IUs twice per week. Thanks for the help. All right, yeah, so when you're on Trenbolone, you can get a really ferocious libido. The sex drive on Trenbolone is really high, and the sex drive can be like different than not on Trenbolone, as in like it can make you be more into being dirty or something like that. It sounds kind of funny, but I'm serious. It can kind of change your preferences or change what turns you on a little bit, I guess. That's how tren is a little bit. So, and just in general, it's a very high sex drive. Yeah, very high libido, very high sex drive. Needs, feeling like wanting to have sex more than once per day on Trenbolone. That would be normal, especially if you have cabergoline going. Trenbolone can give like a chemical castration effect or like a completely limp dick and zero sex drive if your prolactin gets high. And so that's why this guy's using cabergoline in here to keep the prolactin low. But, he's wondering what he can have while on a cruise, because most bodybuilders don't really like to cruise that much. Most bodybuilders want to be on blast. And so a lot of times it'll be like, try to persuade this guy to take a month on a cruise, because bodybuilders don't want to be on cruise. That's when you're not making progress. Bodybuilders want to be on blast. That's when they're getting bigger, or that's when they're getting shredded. That's when they're looking sick. Yeah, so but he still wants to have that sex drive effect. And I would say add in Proviron. If you take 25 milligrams Proviron per day, that doesn't have toxicity. It's like not a toxic oral, taking Proviron. And so you could take that while you're on a cruise, and it's not going to screw things up. You're still going to be okay. And that'll increase your sex drive considerably at 25 milligrams. It'll increase your sex drive more at 50 milligrams. And at 75 milligrams per day, the sex drive will be extremely high. It won't be like a little bit dirty or demented the way Trenbolone could be, but the sex drive will be high, as in wanting to do that multiple times per day, on 75 milligrams of Proviron per day, 75 milligrams plus. That can happen on lower though. That can happen on 50 milligrams per day of Proviron. Proviron is a very strong libido stimulant, but it's like the kind of libido that testosterone gives. So Proviron's great. An alternative to that is Masteron. Masteron is also a very incredibly powerful sex drive and libido stimulant. It makes people want to do sexual things multiple times per day. So that would be Masteron. And Masteron is probably, it's milligram per milligram, it's probably twice as potent in this effect as Proviron is. So we talk about Masteron before, or we talk about Proviron before, but Masteron has an even stronger libido or sex drive stimulant effect. So the dosage on that can be 50 milligrams every other day of Masteron, so 175 milligrams of Masteron propionate per week. Some guys like Masteron and Enanthate. I'm not a fan of Masteron and Enanthate because Masteron will grow your prostate or swell your prostate like nothing else. And Masteron and Enanthate is in your bloodstream 24/7, never goes up or down, it's always up. And that causes a lot of prostate issues, urination issues. And Masteron propionate is more forgiving on that regarding those issues. So I always prefer Masteron propionate, but there are people who prefer Masteron and Enanthate. This is personal preference, and everybody's got to try things themselves and figure out what they like. But yeah, going up to 100 milligrams every other day, now you're going to be getting really strong, libido stimulation, Masteron at 350 milligrams per week. And if you go up to 700 milligrams per week, 1 cc of Masteron propionate every day, or 4 cc's of Masteron E per week, now you've got like serious, like insane sex drive, insane libido, like shit. Maybe you're going to be doing that all day or something like that. Like, geez, Louise. Like, okay, so now you know the range of effects. Now you know the range of effects of how these are at different dosages, how that goes. And yeah, that's my answer for you, is that when you're on cruise, it's probably going to be best to take Proviron and to take like 25 milligrams or 50 milligrams of Proviron per day. That's going to be the most mild thing. But having 175 milligrams of Masteron in there with your cruise, that wouldn't hurt too much. Okay, next question is from Victor. He asks, Hermano, so I've been off gear for 3 months now. I had to get off due to health problems. I'm feeling good, but lost so much size. I'm 225 now. How's 1 cc of Test and 1 cc of Tren look? I look nowhere, that's nowhere near my usual cycle, but will that even make gains, or is that a waste of gear? Okay, yeah, I know this guy. And so when you get health problems and you got to get off gear, it's good to change focus a little bit and change focus about what you're doing right now, because you got to maintain your health as the number one thing. Because you won't be able to have fun in the gym anymore, if you really, really screw up your health. So when you're already having health problems, you got to make sure that you switch your focus to getting better and focusing on that, okay? So that's the first thing I want to say. Now, the second thing I want to say is that testosterone is very low toxicity. And so like taking like TRT, taking around 200 milligrams of testosterone per week. Now, there's something that is, that's going to be okay usually. Even with most health problems, this is going to be okay to still take TRT or to still take 200 milligrams of testosterone per week. Not all health problems, but with a lot of them, okay? And that's still going to be okay to do. And having high normal testosterone levels. So as far as asking, you had to get off gear, been having health problems, now you want to get back on, it might be a good idea to go on 1 milliliter of testosterone for a while and just cruise on that for a while until your health problems are totally gone. That could be a really great idea. If you had to take something, you'd probably take an extra milliliter of testosterone. So you'd be at 500 milligrams per week. But would I recommend Trenbolone? No, because that's going to give you things like high blood pressure. It's going to give you things like impulsive thinking where the consequences may have not been completely analyzed before making decisions or taking action on things with Tren, and as well as other issues, a plethora of issues. And that's why I don't recommend Tren to you right now when you're getting back on gear after having health problems. All right, I'm going to read off a WhatsApp message now that I sent to one of my training clients on my 1-month daily text messaging program on WhatsApp. He is on 1,575 milligrams of testosterone, and he said, yeah, I'm making gains. Not sure if this dose, 1,575, is necessary, but it seems to be tolerable. So he had just boosted up the dose of testosterone after being at a plateau, and then we boosted up to the dose of testosterone and started getting bigger. And this was my reply. High testosterone for a long time is one of the ways to get really big. You start to think things like, being on 1,000 milligrams testosterone per week makes me feel good. And you don't really want to go below that anymore very much, ever. Test isn't real toxic, so you just sort of keep it up real high for long periods of time, and eventually you end up a lot bigger. After like 6 to 9 months, or like 1.5 years. That's definitely part of the method to bodybuilding. Either large doses of testosterone, or large doses of DHEA, or large doses of Tren. Got to choose one or all and use it most of the time while you continue being a bodybuilder. And that is the key with this message right here. And I'm letting you guys know expectations on what it's like living a bodybuilding lifestyle, okay? So when I said that you got to be on that stuff and you got to use it most of the time while you continue being a bodybuilder, that is the reality of living a bodybuilding lifestyle, is that you are on cycle, you are on steroids most of the time. That's what bodybuilding life is like. That's what, like, sometimes guys don't want to be called a bodybuilder or something, but I'm talking about like focused gym life, where your life is like focused on the gym, okay? And it's focused on like building muscle and like burning fat and getting stronger, okay? And being all about the gym, okay? That's what I consider a bodybuilder. So when I say bodybuilder, I'm talking about people who are like doing that, okay? They're like really into bodybuilding, okay? Going to the gym, trying to get big and strong and get lean. That's called bodybuilding, okay? Being really into the gym and all that shit, okay? So the truth about the bodybuilding lifestyle is that when you are living it, you're going to be using steroids most of the time. And it's not going to be a little bit of steroids. It's not going to be a baby dose of steroids. Most of the time, a bodybuilder is using steroids. He's on steroid cycles. He's on drugs, steroid drugs, and a plethora of other, of course, pharmaceutical items that support the steroids and make them tolerable. Of course, yes, preventing side effects, etc. But the thing to get across here is that this activity, this pastime, heavily steroids, medicine, supplements, pills, injections, these are heavy components of being really into this, hobby, being really into bodybuilding. Those things are a heavy part of it. And so if you want to get really into this, know right from the beginning that that's what you're going to be required to do to get what you're looking for, to get what you want. Okay? I think it's good to tell people what's up, not like later after they've already like spent a bunch of time like working towards stuff and then being like, okay, here, now you get the secret information. I think it's better to just say it up front, and then they can make they can make a decision for themselves that is more well-informed from the beginning, instead of being like, oh, well, I'm fucking 5 years into this now and I can't stop now. And now I know this information or whatever like that. It's better to just know right from the beginning. All right, let's move on to the next question. Domian asks, do you have any experience with DHEA or Pregnenolone? DHEA or Pregnenolone? Yes, I do. After a few years on test, he felt a bit flat. DHEA, DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone, it's a prohormone to test an estrogen, helped with this a lot, I feel. On blood tests, I had really low DHEA levels while doing 175 milligrams test a week. Yeah. So when you take testosterone, or any steroids for that matter, you stop your body's own natural production of testosterone. So there are intermediate and precursor hormones that are produced in your testicles. It's not only testosterone being produced there. And you're gonna when you cut off this signaling, you cut off the signaling all the way from the pituitary gland when you start taking steroids. So it's like the pituitary gland stops putting out gonadotropin releasing hormone, and then the hypothalamus stops putting out LH. I got that reversed, okay? The pituitary stops putting out LH and FSH, and the hypothalamus stops putting out gonadotropin releasing hormone. And then the testicles stop producing testosterone as well. And so you're getting like quite a lot of organs that are putting out hormones shutting down. So the thing that Domian's asking about here is replacing some of those hormones, replacing like some of these prohormones that are made, these intermediate hormones. Normally we just assume that since we've got the most powerful of all those hormones, the downstream hormone, and we've got it in large amounts, testosterone and dihydrotestosterone, that we're going to feel good and that we're not going to need some of these, or that it won't be significant, that some of these prohormones or metabolites, we don't have them on board so much. But yeah, some people can feel a bit flat or like lack of energy, like he was describing, or even like libido can be down, and it can be like, why don't I have like any sex drive anymore or something like that. And in these situations, it can be beneficial to take something. Now, this can be taking HCG, and that's usually what I think works the best in this situation, is taking HCG and taking a fairly high dose of it, 500 IUs every other day, and seeing how that goes. Should notice a difference in a couple weeks. But some people take DHEA and Pregnenolone, and some people will just take that and not take the HCG. So take the DHEA and Pregnenolone instead. Pregnenolone's a neurosteroid. It has like GABA function, so it has like calming functions to it. And DHEA is a precursor steroid to estrogen and testosterone, so it makes all the prohormones that are intermediate before those hormones. And so some people will start taking these and they'll feel better. DHEA usually around like 50 milligrams per day, and the same dose with Pregnenolone, 50 milligrams to 100 milligrams per day. Typical doses to take. Some people take up to 150 milligrams of Pregnenolone per day. And so I've experimented with that on myself. Yeah, and I'm one of the people who didn't feel anything from that, okay? I didn't feel anything from that. It's one of those things that should work, looking at the science and seeing, what Pregnenolone does. It should have been something that I felt, I read into it. And then in the real world, it just wasn't quite what the science said, it would be. So for me, yeah, the Pregnenolone should have worked according to scientific papers. But in my body, no, I didn't feel shit. I felt jack shit. I felt nothing. Some people might say they feel something. Some people might say they feel something. Some people might imagine they feel something. If you get on Reddit, you're going to have some people imagining that they're feeling fucking everything for every disease out there, or every side effect out there for every drug that can be taken, they're going to be experiencing, okay? Those people have got mental issues. and so they feel every side effect for every fucking thing. So you guys, I wouldn't trust some of that stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to move on to the next question now. That's enough of that. If you're feeling flat, you're feeling no libido, I recommend HCG, but you can also try DHEA and Pregnenolone. Those are some things you can try when, you should have a libido, but you don't. You've been using steroids for a long time, or you do feel a flat, you just don't got your mojo, you could say. And those might help you. All right, next question is from McGeezer. He says, I'm going to start back on just testosterone. You think straight in at 1 gram would be a good call? I've never went over 400 to 500 milligrams per week of testosterone. Every single big guy I know says once they've done a gram or more for the first time, it was the biggest game changer to their physique. Well, I would agree with that. I would agree with every single big guy I know says once they've done a gram or more for the first time, it was the biggest game changer to their physique. Because it is. It takes things to a totally different level where testosterone has more like drug-like effects rather than like natural hormone but really high levels effects in your body. It takes it more to a level where it's like, shit, like this stuff is really doing stuff now, And so it kind of puts some wind behind your sails, so to speak. Kind of helps drive the progress, makes the progress a little easier. And it also ups the amount of progress that you're going to get. Because for some of you guys, it's like, look at your bone structure, Like, were you born able to ever bench press 3 plates per side or squat 4 plates per side? Like, like if you've got like tiny knees or like tiny hips or like, you don't got big shoulders like at all, like there are people who are built with, big bone structures that are great for playing NFL football and they're really strong. And then there are other people who are born with not big bone structures and they're not strong naturally. They weren't born a strong person. So we have people on like all sides of the spectrum here. And for these people that are born like with these frail bone structures and they're just not strong people, bench pressing 3 plates is going to be something that they can only do under the influence of steroids. And so for them, when they're thinking about like, well, what I'm trying to say is that these guys have got to have realistic expectations. Like they're going to have to be using a lot of steroids in order to be getting like really big and strong because when they're not on those steroids, they're not going to have like that kind of strength and size because those kinds of things for them were only accessible because of taking steroids. And now I could say that for myself. I could say that for myself to some degree too. I'm like average personally. I'm like average male, right? Average Caucasian male. That's where my genetics for bodybuilding are, okay? All right, so I think I covered that pretty good. But for McGeezer, I wouldn't go straight into 1 gram being on nothing because that can just be shocking. I'd go to 500 milligrams for a week or two until you're feeling good on that. And then, up it to 1 gram and then get going with the bodybuilding, man. All right, Sander asks, I want to run cycle, but I have heart failure. First, it was 18% pump function. Now 40% pump function. So it sounds like, his heart wasn't pushing blood well enough, and now it's getting better. He says he's back on little cycles for the past year and have the same 40% pump function now, running low tests like 250 milligrams per week and higher Primo around 400 with some Anavar and 3IU growth hormone. What is your opinion of good growth to grow with my medical conditioning? Getting my daily heart medications. Thanks. Okay. So I think it's good that you were having a problem, you were having a health issue, and you got off gear to help you get better. And you got a better heart function now. So Steroids are not good for heart. They're not good for heart problems. Growth hormone is not either. So taking something like 250 or 500 tests, kind of like what you're doing, you said you're playing with a little Primo, that would be lower risk, keeping things lower risk. But specifically for someone with a condition like you, steroids and growth hormone grow the heart. They grow the left ventricle. They grow the size of the overall heart as well. So those are things that lead to heart failure. So it seems like you should make sure that the steroids are not responsible for your heart failure. And if they are, I have to recommend just being on doctor-prescribed TRT, because it is good to have normal testosterone levels, but not high levels and not steroid levels when you have a condition like heart failure. And so these things like left ventricular hypertrophy or cardiomegaly, where your whole heart grows, if these things are induced by anabolic steroids, not growth hormone, but anabolic steroids, they can be reversed upon cessation of taking steroids, stopping taking steroids. A lot of people don't know that, but almost always, if someone has left ventricular hypertrophy or some cardiomegaly from using steroids, it will resolve almost entirely if they will go off the steroids for about a year. So that's a pretty cool thing, that's going to make you be able to, having that kind of knowledge is going to make somebody be able to get their stress test echocardiogram, because before they might have been too stressed and too scared to get it because they thought that the news of a bad result might be totally damning. And now they know, it can be fixed. Same thing with cardiac calcium scoring scan, all these other tests. Bodybuilders got to take care of the heart. Take aspirin if you have thick blood. And if you've been doing this for a while, been doing heavy cycles, good to get a stress test echocardiogram or calcium scoring scan or both to see how your cardiovascular system is doing. Next question. Big Jim asks, optimal Winstrol cycle duration and how often is it fake? It's not often fake. It's not a high value steroid. It is a very good steroid, though, and totally underrated and totally misunderstood, okay? Winstrol is an incredible hard muscle building steroid. It builds hard muscle tissue. So a lot of people think of Anavar when they think of an oral that does that, okay? But Winstrol is Anavar's father. Winstrol does everything Anavar does, but better. It burns fat better than Anavar. It nutrient partitions better than Anavar. It has a better cosmetic effect than Anavar. It increases strength better than Anavar. It increases muscle mass better than Anavar. Dude, Winstrol is sick, okay? It's one of the best steroids. It's like, some people have a condition where they will get joint issues on it, but a lot of people don't get joint issues on it, all right? So don't let this thing scare you where it's like, oh, you heard this on the internet and you heard all these parrots repeat the same thing over and over again. Like these parrots, you hear something and then something gets trendy and then all these parrots start saying things and it's like a bunch of these parrots haven't even used the things that they're talking about on the internet and saying whether or not you can do it. All right? It's fucking insane. Anyways, Winstrol is an awesome multi-purpose steroid. It's good for bulking and it's good for cutting. It is seriously a multi-purpose steroid. It's basically like, 100 milligrams of Winstrol per day or 80 milligrams of Winstrol per day is like, that is a rush. There is so much firepower there, and that is a rush. Like seeing your muscles, your upper body muscles just magically get stronger, bench pressing more weight, and like the triceps losing all their fat and getting all etched in and stuff, like just spontaneously. It's an awesome steroid. So Those higher dosages that I said are pretty sick, and I would compare them to the effects of like 1,000 milligrams of Primobolan per week, which is also totally sick, totally awesome stuff bodybuilders love. Winstrol is not often fake. The optimal cycle duration for Winstrol is 6 to 8 weeks. After that, usually it gets kind of toxic. Okay, next question. Mr. Kieran asks, I have a question. Is it worth keeping testosterone high like 1,000 milligrams when cutting? Currently on retatrutide GLP-1 and calories are low. Would there be any point in keeping my test at 1,000 milligrams? Does it aid in fat loss doing high test? I'm cutting using 600 test. I wanted to know if is it possible to lose muscle using test only. Right. So 1,000 milligrams when cutting, why would someone do that? Well, 1,000 milligrams of test is going to boost your appetite. So that's one thing you have to keep. This has to be considered. You're cutting, and 1,000 milligrams of test has a pretty potent appetite stimulant effect. And I mean that, pretty potent. Taking a lot of testosterone helps you get bigger because it makes you hungrier. But he's saying that he's not having a problem with that because he's taking retatrutide it keeps his appetite down, retatrutide GLP-1 agonists. So he's not having a problem with appetite. And then he says, would there be any point in keeping my test at 1,000 milligrams? Well, so here's what it is when you're cutting, when you're taking steroids is if you can cut while you're taking steroids, if you can reduce your body weight while you're taking steroids, and you can keep your strength on your compound exercises the same, you didn't lose muscle mass, okay? So let me say that again. If you can make your body weight go down while simultaneously taking steroids and keeping your strength the same, then you didn't lose any muscle, okay? That's how things work. That's how things work. So you can make things very simple like that. And you can show yourself whether or not you are losing muscle while you're cutting because your body weight will be going down and maybe your lifts start going down. And every week, more that you cut, you're weaker. Okay, so that's losing muscle. So here in this situation, doing higher tests is going to help you stay stronger and it's going to help you keep your muscle. So you have to you have to find out for yourself, does 600 do that for me? Or does it take 1,000 for me? Or am I able to do that at all, Because sometimes, taking one of these steroids that really promotes nitrogen retention, like Anavar, Primobolan, Winstrol, or prevents nitrogen degradation, like Trenbolone, when you pair one of those with testosterone and then you do the cutting, it makes the whole process easier, okay? Those ones, they have that muscle sparing effect that is really direct and that is used in clinical medicine, and they help lock in the muscle more. It's a more confident thing because you have that cosmetic effect of steroids that's kind of trying to show, which is more potent in changing your appearance than just testosterone only is when you're using a synthetic anabolic steroid alongside it. All right. Let's get on to the next question. Blake asks, there is a Masteron and Primobolan shortage. Currently on 400 testosterone and Masteron, and I'm prone to acne, just starting a growth phase. Well, I have to ask, if you're prone to acne, how can you be on 400 Masteron? I mean, that's definitely an acne promoting cycle because Proviron and Masteron, in addition to being these sex drive stimulants, they also are acne stimulants and prostate stimulants, okay? So they make your prostate go crazy, and they also create a lot of acne. And so for people who are susceptible to that, they can get you really bad acne. Or for people who normally don't get any acne from steroids, it's like these ones can actually give you a little bit of acne. So that's that with regards to you being prone to acne. Blake also asks, what would be the best compound to add with testosterone without looking like a water goblin? Love your podcast. Okay, so Masteron and Primobolan, then and you don't want to use Tren, then the next best one is Equipoise. But maybe you don't want to use Equipoise, so there's a metabolite of Equipoise that is also good called DHB or 1-testosterone. And that used to be a pro-hormone that people took, but now it's an injectable product. And then if you can't get those, then you're pretty much better off just going with Anavar. Anavar is a very low toxicity oral that you can take at a pretty high dose for a long period of time and grow muscle with it without getting toxic. So you could do something like 8 weeks or 12 weeks of something like 50 to 100 milligrams of Anavar per day. And that could be another option for you if there's a Masteron and a Primo shortage and you don't want to use Tren and Equipoise doesn't work for you and you don't have access to DHB. Yeah, complicated stuff. All right, Prince asks, this is more of a statement than a question. I find it bewildering that Big Pharma will take products like GLP-1s that were originally developed for diabetes and then discovered some of the side effects were significant weight loss, fat loss. However, they will never get behind products like Anavar, mild side effects yet powerful, which helps patients who are bedridden with certain diseases maintain their muscle and not produce and promote Anavar for the general public to help maintain and grow muscle tissue to prevent the worst thing that happens to us, aging. There's always good and bad with any medication that you take. It's convenient that they always discuss the benefits outweighing the risks when it comes to their narrative for their gains. That's true. That's true. It really seems to me like people got to be responsible for their own health. That's what it seems like to me, is that when it comes to your health, that, trusting in these organizations and stuff, from what I've seen, from what I've researched, which has been very deep, done very deep research on this stuff. And it seems like there's a lot of bias. And it seems like there's a lot of funding and a lot of silencing and a lot of money controlling what kind of studies come out and money controlling what kind of medicines come out and what kind of marketings happen for those medicines. It seems like it's a very, very dark thing once you really start looking into that. It can be a very dark thing to see because we all want to believe that big brother organizations or agencies or governments or whatever is, looking out for our best interests. We always want to believe that. We don't want to believe that there might be other motives fueling things with medicine and health and the things that they say to us. That's disturbing. But, Prince makes a good point that, they found they found a blood pressure medicine that makes you get erections. So you get a Viagra out of that. It was supposed to be a blood pressure medication, and they start marketing it for erections instead. And then you get Anavar. That's an evil anabolic steroid, but, it could help people. Like Prince said, aging, losing muscle and losing that lean body mass and losing the collagen in your skin and everything. Anavar is pretty low risk, and it's used in children, It's not like this is some kind of really heavy addictive substance that's going to harm society or something like that. But they sure aren't marketing that. So I guess that one doesn't have much financial gains associated with it. Okay, T-Grow asks, hey boss, quick question you might address. How to tell if you're developing gyno or just discovering old gyno due to getting more lean. Running some Tren, and my chest has never been flatter, but I found a dime-sized lump behind the right nipple. There's no sensitivity or pain, so not sure if it's growing or I've just reached a point where I can tell it's been there since puberty. Looking forward to the pod as always. Yeah, so there's always going to be gyno, I guess I could call them gynecologists. They're these guys who are obsessed with nipples, And so they're constantly like viewing other men's nipples and like analyzing them and stuff. And like maybe they're looking through Instagram, they're like looking at photos and they're like, that guy's got gyno, that guy's got gyno, gyno. Like labeling every guy that they see as like gyno and then like dismissing them or something, right? That's the issue, man. Like you've got issues if you're doing that, man. So me saying that just now, that's not something I made up. That's something people are doing this shit, okay? And I'm telling you that you've got like a fixation on nipples. So there is some degree of variation that can be acceptable in male nipples without being like, that's gyno, okay? So if someone has something growing underneath the nipple, right? And it's like a hard thing and it's pushing out against the nipple and it's making the nipple have a certain appearance, that is gyno, okay? It's like hard breast tissue that develops below the skin, okay? It's not like a floppy nipple or like, you know, somebody says like, I have got floppy nipples or something like that. Or they say like, well, they want their nipple to, they don't like the way it looks when it's warm outside or something like that. Like this is not gyno, okay? And if you do have something behind your nipple, there's something there, but it's not pushing out and causing an appearance, I would put that under the range of like going through puberty and having a range of what is normal for male nipples. It's not like you're going to have zero estrogen going through puberty. Like there's going to be a range of what is normal. And if you got something, a little tiny something behind there, like a few grains or something like that, you know, and it's not pushing out, causing an appearance, I wouldn't call that gyno. You know, I'd call that, like, you know, that's a variation on the male nipple. There's not zero behind it, right? It's good if you've got zero behind it. But that's not the case with everyone. And it doesn't mean, you know, that like you need to be freaking out about gyno and shit like that, you know? You know, people need to pay a little less attention to that. Although there is guys, you know, and especially guys taking tren, you know, where you can see some unsightly gyno and that can be distracting, right? But if it's not like unsightly gyno, if it's just a tiny bit, I'll let you know one thing. Ronnie Coleman won the 1998 Mr. Olympia with severe gyno in one side of his chest, okay? So there, he won the fucking Mr. Olympia with severe gyno on one side of his chest. His first Mr. Olympia, where we all say he looks so fucking awesome. He had severe gyno on one side of his chest. I'm just saying, just don't dismiss people. Don't dismiss yourself. Don't let this be a source of massive anxiety for you. If you need to get surgery on it, get surgery on it. But my opinion is to be chill about gyno, not to be uptight about gyno. Ollie asks, for the podcast, any advice on what foods to eat right before training for people that train first thing in the morning? Would a protein shake and some really fast carbs be good? Please share some light on this in relation to insulin whilst training. I do my intra-workout supplements with carbs, etc., but I have nothing before training. Thanks. Yeah, so an easy thing if you work out first thing in the morning would be whey protein mixed with oats. And the oats would be the type of oats that were not steel-cut oats, but they'd be quick oats, where they were all blended up. So they just create like a mush when you heat them up and put water in there. And then having that mixed with whey protein. That is a very light and perfect pre-workout breakfast. You know, since you're doing intra-workout nutrition, this may not be so important for you, though, to eat before training, since you're already going to be, you know, during the workout, you're not going to be in a catabolic state because you'll have dextrose in your body and insulin in your body from the intra-workout nutrition that you're doing. But yeah, like I said, something like a couple pieces of white toast and some Greek yogurt, that could be another good one, or some eggs or egg whites. Drinking some egg whites or cooking some egg whites and having that with some toast, white toast or something like that. But yeah, I think that the protein oats, those are the classic, those are the go-to. Those work really good. Those are a good pre-workout meal. They just like get incinerated in a bodybuilder's metabolism. They digest so fast. Whey protein mixed with with oats. So that's what I think there on a good pre-workout, what to eat pre-workout. If it's during the day, it's not first thing in the morning, a good food to eat pre-workout would be an hour or 2 hours before workout. 2 hours is kind of a long time, like 90 minutes to 60 minutes would be chicken breast with rice, or a potato, like a baked potato with chicken breast. And you can do white fish, or you can do egg whites again. But the thing is that when you're in the workout and you've got insulin high, you don't want to have dietary fat high at the same time, because whatever's in your blood is going to get pile driven or shoved into the cells when the insulin is present during the workout. And so you don't want to have a bunch of dietary fat in there either, because it's going to be a negative nutrient partitioning event. You want to make sure that when your insulin is high, your fat content, dietary fat content in your blood is low, and your dietary protein content and carbohydrate content is high. Okay. Next question is from Fabian, who asks, "Hi, Dan, question for the podcast. If you could only choose one exercise for a body part, what would you choose? Interesting in having your opinion on training frequencies for lagging body part." Okay, for chest, it's going to be barbell bench press. And that's with a pause, okay? That's with a 1 second pause on your chest. Barbell, 1 second pause bench press. That is the key to making bench press be the ultimate chest exercise, is pausing with the barbell on your chest and going 1,000 and then pressing up, okay? So you come down, the barbell touches your chest, and you wait and you go 1,000 and then you press it up, okay? When you do that, the barbell bench press is the best damn chest exercise that exists. It's the best. It grows muscle mass like crazy. The second best chest exercise is dumbbell incline bench press. All right. And this is another great one. And another thing that you need to remember on this is that the pause in the stretch position on these presses is what recruits 100% of those muscle fibers in the chest. That is the killer training tip for people with a lagging chest, is 1 second pause in the stretch position of each rep on every pressing exercise. All right, for back, the best exercise for building muscle is the bent over barbell row. The bent over barbell Yates row is the best exercise by far for putting muscle on the back. It is the exercise. It is sick. It is sick how 3D that exercise can make you. And you've got to learn how to do it perfectly. You've got to learn how to pull it to your hip bones, not the center of your chest. And you got to learn how to activate your complete back and to stop rocketing it into the air with your legs. And yeah, doing it exactly the way that Dorian Yates does it, all right? And once you can do that, once you know how to do that right, it will be the most effective back exercise for your entire back that exists. The second most effective back exercise is the 100% bent over dumbbell row. Okay, so this kind of dumbbell row, you put both feet on the floor, and then you make it so that your back is completely bent over so that it's parallel with the floor, okay? You bend over at a 90-degree angle from the waist so that you're not like standing up, like at a 45-degree angle, like looking up. Like, no, you are fucking bent down at the ground completely so that your back is parallel with the ground, okay? And you're looking at the ground, okay? And now the dumbbell, you pull that up, and you pull that up near the bottom of your rib cage. That's kind of the aiming point. The bottom of the rib cage or the top of the hips is the aiming point. And you pull that up, and then you put it down. You keep 2 feet on the floor. You completely bend yourself over, and you do one arm at a time. You put one arm on something to steady yourself, okay? And so the Yates row is like standing up, like at a 45-degree angle, right? But then the dumbbell row is completely bent over, parallel with your back parallel with the floor, okay? And if you do these two exercises, like bent over barbell row, followed by parallel with the floor, dumbbell row, and you work up with these exercises, and you're doing 315 for reps with bent over barbell row, and you're doing more than 100-pound dumbbells for reps with the parallel with the floor, dumbbell row. Dude, your back is going to be so fucking huge in 3D. It's going to be so huge in 3D, okay? It grows. These exercises make your entire back explode, and they make it 3D. Okay, for shoulders, the best exercise is the dumbbell lateral raise. Dumbbell lateral raises. If you guys want shoulders that pop, if you guys want round shoulders, you know, you got to take stuff like Anadrol, Tren, okay? And then you got to do pumping up all the time with the lateral raises, with the dumbbells, shoulder lateral raises with the dumbbells. That works, man. You do heavy ones with bad form. You do medium ones with decent form, and then you do light ones with perfect form. You pump that shit up, and then they get all inflated, and they look like bowling balls. Okay, for biceps, the best exercise is the bicep preacher curl machine. For triceps, the best exercise is dips. And for legs, the best exercises are either free weight or Smith machine squat, one of the two. If you can't do those, either of those for some reason, that's fine. And a hack squat would be a great alternative, okay? And then the second best exercise for legs, and this is for the glutes and the hamstrings, is either the barbell or the dumbbell Romanian deadlift. And so those are the exercises that I believe that with these, really just with these exercises, if you can get really good at these exercises, you will develop a body that is shocking to the general public. Shocking, because you're going to be this muscle man, and you're going to have total development, and you're going to be strong as fuck in the real world, stuff like that, okay? Patrick asks, I want you to talk about tren esters. If longer esters could result in less sides, heard of people having really good experiences with enanthate or hexahydrobenzyl carbonate, also known as parabolan. Okay, this is what I have to say about this, is back in the day, I guess back in 2010 or so, when forums were more popular, you know, like we had like GH15 on the Get Big forum, right? And in his GH15 Bible, he said that tren enanthate was side effects in a bottle and to never use it, and it's shit, okay? So that's extreme. That's extreme to say something like that. And obviously it does work. And so that's what I mean, is he was being extreme and exaggerating. But he was the, quote, god of hormones back then. And pretty much whatever he said is what then everybody else on the internet would then go parroting. You know, it would spread around and go parroting. So tren enanthate, long ester tren used to be considered side effects in a bottle. But now, you know, we have other people, you know, new people say, and the new popular thing is to say is like, oh, okay, enanthate or like hexahydrobenzyl carbonate. And like some people are saying like, I need steady levels of tren in my blood. Like, that's so fucking... I always just laugh when I hear this stuff because I'm like, it's just so completely unnatural. You guys are like analyzing things that in ways that you're analyzing things you don't understand. Okay, because natural hormones are pulsatile. They're totally pulsatile. They go up and down all day. Testosterone, natural testosterone, okay? It is not a straight line, okay? So if you then go like and introduce tren and you want it to be as much like your natural hormones as possible, then you do ACE and have it being like up and down, okay? If you want it to be stable, okay, if you want it, you can introduce this drug to your body if you want, and you can introduce it in a stable manner, okay, with like enanthate or something. But just know that that is in no way mimicking the natural way or the way that your body was designed to like feeling sex hormones or something, okay? You can like that. You can like, and it can work for you, okay? Everybody to each their own. Okay, so same thing with hexahydrobenzyl carbonate. There's nothing special about these long esters. It's that they're just long esters. And you know, hexahydrobenzyl carbonate was the ester that was used in medicine negmaference parabolan, pharmaceutical grade parabolan for humans. But just because it had the ester on it doesn't mean it's some special shit. It's just an ester that's longer than enanthate. It's slower acting. Usually fast-acting steroids work better than their slower-acting counterparts. If you inject a shot of Tren Ace and you inject a shot of Tren E, one hits harder. It's a Tren Ace. If you inject a shot of Test Prop and Test E, one hits harder. It's Test Prop. If you take orals, they hit hard because they're in your blood instantly. Like fast steroids have a really powerful bodybuilding effect. So that's what I think. So do I think that Tren E is good or bad? I think it's good. I think Tren Enanthate's good. I think Tren hexahydrobenzyl carbonate parabolan is good. If they work good with people, that's good. Some guys are gonna feel great on that, and it's gonna be like a lower injection frequency because maybe they could do 3 milliliters of Tren per week and 3 milliliters of testosterone per week. So that would be 750 test, 600 Tren, and that's a freaking powerful cycle right there, man. And that would be Test E and Tren E, okay? And that's a super powerful cycle, 6 cc's a week. That's pretty awesome. I generally think acetate, Trenbolone acetate, is the superior form of Trenbolone. If people want to experiment with long esters, especially if you're Tren fans, you already know you like Tren, so it's not going to bother you to have Tren in your system for a long time without the ability to get it out or change the dosage or something like that if you're running into side effects. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to go ahead and give it a go. All right, and the last question for today is from Ryan. He says, "Hey Dan, I'm on TRT, was prescribed 100 milligrams per week. My test levels went from 300 to 1,300 nanograms per deciliter. With that came itchy, sore nipples. I'm down to 40 to 60 milligrams per week, and it has subsided a bit, but it's still slightly there. Could I be super sensitive to T? I want to blast with T and Primo, but want to know how much the Primo suppresses my T. Just trying to figure out how much I should take. I was thinking 250 tests per week plus 300 Primo per week and adding 50 milligrams of D-ball." All right. Well, if you're having trouble with estrogen, D-ball is not the hormone to add because out of all the hormones, D-ball is going to give you the most problems with managing estrogen. It is really hard to manage estrogen from D-ball. That type of estrogen is very potent and it can blast through, I guess you could say, AIs and stuff like that. If you're, so let's say like, you say you have itchy, sore nipples. There's still something there. Okay, so the first thing is you got to get your estrogen down. Okay, so that's not happening anymore. Okay, so that's the first thing. Okay, and then if this was like something you had problems with, you could consider taking Nolvadex on cycle. Okay, blocking the estrogen receptor. Okay, but normally you should be able to take care of this by just reducing your total body estrogen levels so that your estrogen levels are normal, and then your nipple will not be having an issue. Okay, and D-bol, like I said, is not the one to add when you're having this issue. But yeah, I think 250 test 300 Primo per week would be good. You're asking like how much Primo to take with testosterone. Generally, like the same amount of Primo as testosterone works really good. Like 500 Primo, 500 testosterone, 1,000 testosterone, 1,000 Primo. I mean, that's pretty much the standard way to do it. All right, that's going to be the last question for today. If you guys need further access to my bodybuilding knowledge, you can sign up for my 1-month daily text messaging program, which is like a bodybuilding service that I do where any bodybuilding related questions you can ask me each day, WhatsApp text messaging, and I'll get back to your questions within 24 hours or less. It's $99 for a month. And then the other service that I do is the 1-hour phone call consultation, which is $59. Get on the phone for an hour and talk bodybuilding and talk about training, diet, supplements, what you're doing, what your program is, and go over everything. So you can hit me up at steroidspodcast@gmail.com.